Okay, so I got to set up a Sony INZONE M3. This is the monitor that's used for the EVO tournaments. I've been looking forward to testing on this, mainly so that I guess my results are a bit more standardized and applicable to things that are going on in the fighting game scene. The results were not as quite I would have expected, and so I was quickly going to run through. So these are all up on my Google Sheets, which has kind of a collation of most of the work I've been doing for camera input lag testing. I'll also talk through some of the, I guess, the way to interpret the images and so forth that I've shown. So quickly, if we have a look at what was already done. So I spent some time previously having a look at Guilty Gear on the LGC2, and then I was hoping I could use that as a base to further interrogate and understand how input lag is changing or happening on the INZONE M3. So as always, there's quite a lot going on. The kind of takeaway from it was that if you had auto apply set on for VRR, irrespective of the hertz setting, then you would tend to have this kind of draw time of about 8 milliseconds, not perfectly, but near to, kind of at the end of the frame, so to speak. So if you had VRR off, then you would have a draw time of about 16 milliseconds, ending at the same time, and indeed all of these end at pretty much the same time. If you had auto apply on, but 120 hertz off, that didn't make a huge difference. And if you had VRR off and... oh, sorry, I might have put them around the wrong way. In any event, forcing VRR seemed to be the wrong thing to do. It seemed to be better that if the game supports VRR, as very few of the fighting games do, then that should be added. And if not, you'll kind of get this roughly 8 millisecond penalty. So that averages out to be a 4 millisecond performance lag. But the frame starts drawing 8 milliseconds later and finishes at the same time. And as expected, none of these settings make any difference for PlayStation 4 games. So that was our LGC2 as a baseline. So the VRR settings have a large impact on what happens. I went through and then had a look at the Guilty Gear PlayStation 5 version running on the INZONE M3. I had it set at the faster setting and generally had VRR set on in the monitor, but turned it off at the end, and I'll mention that on the way. Now, I'm not entirely sure what order these will come to, so we'll just kind of talk through them as we get them. So if you've seen the previous video, you'd be somewhat familiar with the layout here, but essentially the way it goes, so I have video off the screen. It's a Casio, it's a 480 frames per second camera, so it gives us about 2 millisecond resolution. There's an LED light that lights up blue, and so that's what you're looking for in this top left screen. You go from black, so the LED not lit, to the LED lit. At the same time, in the bottom left, you're looking for the top command icon to change, and in the bottom right, we're looking for the bottom command icon to change. The reason to look at it in two places, and it took quite a bit of work to get this functionality going, but it's well and truly worth it, is that sometimes it's a bit unclear what frequency the screen is drawing at. And so the way this one works, you've got one right at the bottom of the screen, you've got one, 233, about a sixth of the way down the screen. So you'd expect it would take about 12 milliseconds or so, maybe 10 to 12 milliseconds to draw that distance, and then you can kind of extrapolate either side to find where the top and the bottom of the screen would start their drawing. It's slightly hampered again by the fact that it's a 2 millisecond resolution, so it's not perfect, and you do have to round off some of the results and accept that some of the results that are close are probably, you can't prove that they're meaningfully different. So, having a look at this, This is VRR on auto. This is 120 Hz on auto. So as per the previous test, hopefully this would give us our optimal results. But this one's taking about 53 milliseconds at the top and then 61 at the bottom. So if we apply the same program that we did, if we kind of apply the same formula that we did for the previous one, then what you will find is that the results come in a bit slower than we might have hoped. So this is VRR Auto, this is this one here. So if we just look at this one, it will be about 51 at the top and 61 at the bottom, which is slower than the corresponding, sorry, lots of stuff to go through here. So this was auto apply. I don't think I had a VRR just set to auto. I might have gone back and done it later, but off should correlate about the same. So probably this would be the equivalent. So you can see here, this is starting at 44 and ending at 60, whereas for this test, we are starting at 51 and ending at almost 60. LCD screen technology tends to take a bit longer to transition. It's a bit of a less crisp, smooth, clear transition, so it's not surprising to have a millisecond or two in it. But comparing a start time of 51 versus 44, that's pretty meaningful. Okay, if we then have a look at our next test, so this is VRR off, 120 Hz auto. Again, this would hopefully be the same as the last one, and the start and finish times look about the same. When we have a look at our database, so that was VR off, 120 Hz auto, so that's here. So about 50 to 60, again not down to that kind of 44 that we saw with our LGC2 when VRR wasn't forced on. The thing is, if we skip through these, you'll find that almost all of the results are much the same. There's none in the 40s. Interesting that one's quite a bit brighter. They're all kind of that 52, 53 to 60, 61. There was nothing I could do to improve this or change this. So with the LGC2, there seemed to be effect by going and not forcing VRR, whereas for this, it always seems to have much the same. I've turned off VRR on the screen. I've turned off VRR in the PS5 settings. I've gone back and updated the firmware to make sure that that wasn't an issue, and it's on its most recent firmware. I can't really think of anything else I can do. And so it seems as though the INZONE M3, if you've got a 16.66 millisecond window to draw a 60 Hz frame, and the 120 Hz setting doesn't change anything, it seems to draw it in that last half, which would lead to, like we said, on average a 4 millisecond input lag increase. But for the top of the screen, it's actually 8 milliseconds behind, and at the bottom of the screen, it's 0 milliseconds behind, give or take. And I guess then the thing to compare, which kind of drives this point home, is that if you have a look at a RL2755, so this is a old school 60 Hz monitor, you're getting, values of 47 at the start. And 61 at the end. So you're significantly fast, not significantly, but slightly faster using an old school 60 Hz monitor, which I'm sure was not the intention. So this, I'm more than happy to try to find a setting which, improves or changes this, but over, and how many tests was that? Some 8,000 tests today, plus probably another 1,000 that I didn't report because they were replicants of things. I couldn't demonstrate any settings that would improve this input lag. So that's certainly not what I was expecting. I'll continue to have a look, and I think potentially Street Fighter 6 will be a bit different. But for 60 Hz games, a number of which Evo is comprised of, it does seem that there is a little bit of a input lag increase compared to other monitors.